Rockin' North America, the Caribbean, and Europe. It's LA Lloyd Rock 30.
Hey, it is LA Lloyd, and today is the 14th time for 3 Days Grace to co-host the Rock 30. We had Matt on the show back in June via Zoom, and I made a promise to you that when you guys came to Austin, I was going to be here.
And here we are.
And here we are, and we've got our good friend Barry with us as well, man.
Howdy.
Good to see you guys. So let's go ahead and jump into some things about Explosions. Obviously, we've got two number one songs that have been on the Rock 30 that we'll talk about a little bit more later. But, first I wanted to talk about, kind of going back, it's almost been like clockwork. Every 3 years we'd have an album, and I guess maybe the plan was 3 years on this one as well, but because of COVID, it got pushed back to 4. So was the album already finished and you just kind of had to sit on it until you were ready to go, or it just took longer to finish because of the COVID?
Yeah, I think, we took our time, and we like to tour when we release our album, so I think we wanted to, do that too, and that's why we waited till we were able to tour this album, because, didn't want to release it and then just be sitting at home.
Well, I got to tell you one thing, man. You look tan today. Is it because you've been playing a lot of outdoor shows, or what's going on here?
No,
he's got on the long sleeves, man.
Yeah, I was sitting by the pool all day.
Nice.
Yeah, swimming.
Taking it easy.
Texas heat.
Oh, yeah.
Nice.
Well, as we mentioned here at the beginning of the show, last time I talked with Matt was on Zoom, as I have hundreds of interviews since COVID started. And when you guys first had to be separated, and obviously everyone started using Zoom, did you realize that eventually that was going to be kind of the method that you were actually going to be sitting down and laying down some parts for the album?
No, we had no idea. We never really worked on Zoom or anything before, because we'd always get together.
Right.
We always write together at the same time and being in a room together. And this was the first time that once the COVID hit, and I'd moved to the States as well, and these guys were in Canada. So once 2020 happened, the beginning of there, we knew we wouldn't be able to see each other. However, like in 2019, we came off tour with Five Finger Death Punch, and we knew we were going to take some time off between the record, take a little bit of time, and then get to work. So then all that happened, and we had no choice other than to somehow figure out how to start putting this record together. So between Zoom, and that's really awkward, to write. Yeah. It's not like you can jam, you're canceling each other out, but doing that, and then but we figured that out there's another program called Audio Movers, which will allow us through an app to all hear each other's sessions. So we could piece together stuff as we're writing on Zoom. We could piece it all as it's happening as well, right? So.
The thing that I love about Zoom, obviously, is, like when we're in person, obviously we got eye contact, we got body chemistry, and Zoom has kind of helped make interviews, I think, sound a little more natural. And I guess from a musician standpoint, you have the body chemistry when you're all together in the room. Did you finally get to where you're kind of noticing each other's, like when you give them something new and you can kind of immediately see whether they liked it or not?
Yeah, I think when everybody goes silent, that's probably not a good idea. Yeah. When only one person is talking, that's probably when it's like, maybe it's not good.
Right. That's funny, man. So as you guys were working on these new songs, I mean, as far as, like you said, you're all jamming together in the rooms before on the previous albums, and you had that software I wasn't familiar with that you just explained to me, but I mean, were you still able to jam together, or were you just giving each other pieces and then one of you were putting it all together and then sending it back?
Again, you couldn't really jam like as if you're in a room. Like usually if we're all in a room together, I'm noodling all the time, and someone might say, we all do. And someone might say, oh, what's that you're playing over there? That's a cool riff, maybe. So that was a little harder to do. So you try to sneak in your moments, when everybody goes silent. I'm playing a riff or something,
Right.
But we just keep passing around. We did more constructing, which ended up being the skeleton of what became the songs.
Right.
This time around, which allowed us more time to experiment. Like Neil built a lot of the drums over it, on his end, and he'd assemble, say, the demo, build a session, get that going. I could be tracking guitars while we're all muted on Zoom.
Wow.
And he's over there singing, on his end, and then we'd send it all in to Neil, sort of assemble it as we're going.
Yeah. And
then we could all hear it back, exactly what's being heard, right? So it was, like I said, it was a learning curve, but it was quite interesting once we started to get it down. And in a way, I guess we became more efficient, in some ways. Usually we'd spend days on end together. And this way, you'd spend 3 hours in the afternoon and then just really focus on that song.
Yeah. Now, you told me you have a vocal booth at your house or behind your house there. I mean, were you getting a lot of coaching, or was this stuff that you were just kind of doing yourself and then getting feedback?
Yeah, like for the record itself, we built a vocal booth just 5 minutes down the road at Neil's house. We built it in an old closet, put some foam in there.
Yeah.
And then we actually had Howard Benson on FaceTime from LA. So like for the real vocals on half the record, that's where they were done, and we did it that way. For building the demos, the skeleton of the song, I would just do it on my computer and send it over to Neil, and then we just pop it in, and yeah.
To me, it seems like it would be a nightmare unless this software you're talking about, like with Howard, because with Skype or FaceTime, sometimes there's a little bit of a latency, and he's not hearing it in real time. So was that a challenge for you?
Like Barry said earlier, there's a thing that you can put into your Pro Tools that sends the feed like almost real time.
Right.
So he could hear it real time. He's on on Zoom or whatever. He's just giving feedback through Zoom, but he is actually hearing the actual session through an app that is that's
pretty much real time.
Yeah, real time.
Yeah, the only latency would be between the app and the Zoom.
Right.
So as you're doing that, if you're working, you're just listening to the real time.
So there would be no difference between me
Zoom.
being at his house or me being in Canada and him being in LA. No difference.
Did you guys find by working in individual places that maybe you spent a little more time than you normally would if you were in a group situation, because maybe just in your own head, no matter what instrument you play, you start overanalyzing it a little bit? Or
the complete opposite.
Really?
Because if we were all in person trying to build a demo on a computer, or just like, we will play it all together initially, but then when we try to actually build the demo, only one person can go at a time.
Right.
So this Barry could be playing the guitar part, I could be singing this singing at my place, and those two could be talking about a whole different part that's coming up next.
Wow.
So it does have its benefits for sure.
So when you finally got together, I mean, it was all mixed, and you could all be in the same room, and you can hear these mixes, as loud as you want, or wherever the case may be, and you were all four of you together. What was that like? Was it like?
It was very interesting because we did over half the record. Well, it was till the very end of recording the record process where we finally met. So earlier in the year of 21, we had already had like So-Called Life and Lifetime. We had like 6 songs ready to go. So they were actually, what we were doing was they're in 2 different studios. He's singing to Howard, like he was saying, when we were tracking the original ones.
Right.
I moved to the States. They're in Canada, so we couldn't see each other at all, right? Everything was kind of locked up. So I was able to fly to LA, though. So I would fly to LA, do the guitars with Mike Plotnikoff. And these guys were in 2 different studios up there doing their parts. Brad and Neil recording there. He's singing. So at one point we had 3 studios running at the same time.
Wow.
In 2 different countries.
That's
amazing. And again, through this thing, we could all at any time listen in on the other person's session. So you see, there's times where I didn't see them or anything else, and I'd be tracking stuff, and I'd get texts blowing up on my phone. Oh yeah, I love that. That's a great part. Yeah, put that in there.
And then finally at the end, we hadn't seen Barry for 2 years.
Really?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow.
Only on a screen. So
the thing about it is recording. It seems like its technology's got better. Stuff has got a lot smaller, but this sounds like it's actually even a bigger production because you're in so many different places all over the place.
Sure.
It can be done. Is the cool part. It can be done.
Yeah. So when you were able to finally, get ready, you've got your tour plans going on, and obviously you had to get into rehearsals. So how long were the rehearsals? And again, after a 2-year absence, what was it like just getting in there working on these new songs together for the first time?
I think we only did about 3 or 4 days in Canada.
Yeah. We had a week booked, and for production too. We were doing
but
production,
personally, we all rehearse on our own. Like I have my little studio, and I got the songs running through the PA. So I'm getting ready, and everybody comes in, practiced, rehearsed, and then we do it all together. And
we were close.
How about getting back on the road, though? I mean, like I said, you can rehearse all day, but again, I got to think, we all kind of took for granted about live shows, and all of a sudden we didn't have them. Then you walk on stage, and it seemed like the fans were just as excited because they kind of, realized he took it for granted too. He's like, holy, you don't realize how bad it is till your live shows get yanked away from you. You know?
Yeah.
It's true. The shows are really fun because of it. I think everybody's just excited that we're, somewhat back to doing the things we did. Which is singing and playing music and enjoying each other's company.
Even
it's
in
really
100-degree weather like we
Yeah.
got
We'll
tonight.
see,
Can't wait to see how that's going to go. I'm glad you mentioned Howard a little bit, because Howard is one of these guys who I don't think he's ever thrown anything away. It seems like he's resoldering or making it cool. And, you guys have talked about how this album had a little bit more of an analog feel to it. I mean, was it just simply because Howard did something different, or what would you say gave it a little more of an analog feel, or just because it was all done so differently?
Howard is always analog. He has like all old school organs and stuff, and then he puts them together. He solders them, like he's a mad scientist at his place. But we like to combine them now. There's benefits to both.
Is there anything you guys have ever asked Howard for that he did not have at his disposal right
Personal?
there?
I don't know.
I don't think so.
Like this
no.
time around, Neil did some really cool parts too. He did a lot more programming and stuff on this one himself.
Okay.
So he came up with a whole interesting bunch of sounds in his own kind of way too, right?
Also,
So
there's a guy named Ted Bruner that we write a lot with. He actually co-wrote a song that I did way back in the day called "Porn Star Dancing," and we co-wrote "So-Called Life" with him, and "Lifetime," and I think "Explosions" is a co-write with him.
Wow.
And he's kind of a mad scientist on his own too. Like he's got some wacky keyboard parts, and I think actually like the start of "So-Called Life" is one of Ted's. Like keyboard parts. So
Wow.
yeah.
That's very cool, man. Well, let's talk about So-Called Life. I mean, what I've read about this is you had the chorus written for this song before the pandemic. Then you wrote the verses once the pandemic kicked in. I guess it's kind of a rhetorical question maybe in a way, but had pandemic not happened, would these verses have been different to match more with what you'd already done with the chorus, or is that... I guess that's a hard one to answer, but...
That is hard to answer because it kind of happened. But, the chorus, it's like a party song. We had it before anything happened. But, I don't know. That's a tough one. I think everybody feels a little isolated anyways.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just feel alone and, you feel like you want to put a chainsaw through the wall.
Right.
Because,
frustrated,
life can be frustrating sometimes, for sure.
I mean, the pandemic had to have, helped with maybe made it a little bit more angsty, a little bit more like you just want to get out and, have a good time, and you're over the, you're about to burst, you know what I mean? With feeling, isolated and frustrated, and, sure that had
Thank God we got through it, right?
Yeah, and we did. Yep.
Now, you said you'd moved to Los Angeles.
No, I'm in Indiana.
Indiana?
Yeah.
Okay, you're in Indiana. You're still in Norwood.
Yeah.
And so why is it important to stay there? I mean, it's where you grew up. You went to high school there. Your roots are there. You probably played sports there, I'm taking it. So why is it important to stay at the home base there instead of – it seems like the darling city right now is Nashville. It seems like every artist I know has left Austin and moved to Nashville. Why do you think it's still important to be in Canada?
I travel a lot of places. I get to see a lot of things, a lot of cities. But when I come home, I feel like I'm at home, I wouldn't want to move away from there. That's where I grew up. That's where my parents are. That's where my brother lives. It's just like where I belong, I lived in Toronto for a while, and it's a big city and stuff, and I just I can't take it. I feel overwhelmed. Every time I go to New York City, I just feel so overwhelmed. Although it's a great place, but it's just not for me. I'm a country boy at heart. So
right.
Yeah.
So on the song "Lifetime," Matt was telling me the story. Obviously the song was written prior to that tornado that happened there in Mayfield, and I guess, correct me if I'm wrong here, but you were telling me that some photos or something had actually flown through the storm and landed in your yard or something, and that's where maybe the idea for the video, or the idea to kind of help out that town star? Maybe
yeah,
just tell me that story.
We started talking about that. We had the song, it was finished and completed, and then that had happened, and I remember that very clearly that night because I was getting all the storm warnings, and so it was fairly close. We didn't get any damage. However, I have a friend that lives close to where that is, the next town over.
Okay.
And he had asked me, he said, hey, did you find any photos after the storm in your backyard? He says, they have a friend, oddly enough, where I live is very rural. They have a friend that has a farm there, and they said there was all kinds of photos scattered out throughout.
Wow.
In their thing, and he says, maybe go have a look. And sure enough, I go out and I look. I go out, look out at my lawn. I got a huge lawn, and I start walking around, and I'm finding photos, and they're like older photos. I'd love to know who they came from. I see a sort of name, a half name, and a date or something.
Yeah.
But I thought it was quite interesting because somewhere there, there's a story. That's someone's life. So it was.
That
is
is
really, really weird.
I mean, it's so unbelievable, first of all, how it, ties with the video just from that one little instance, man. But, I mean, now that you guys have really raised a lot of money and brought an awareness about this, I mean, how is that progressing since, the video first came out?
Yeah, I think it got a lot of awareness, and I think they started to meet their goals that they're wishing to go for. But, like they said there, man, it's going to take years and years for it to get back to the way it was.
Right.
And oddly enough, after we did that video, after I went down there, in my area, which never gets tornadoes or anything, we've had 3 touchdown over this past year in Canada, in my area. And actually, I got an insurance settlement because it hit my house.
Wow.
It took down a couple of trees, probably 35 trees.
Holy cow.
Big maple trees that, it was pretty crazy. Never happened before. We went there, saw what that was like, and then I actually watched it from my, window just take down trees. And, it wasn't as big as the Mayfield one by any means, but, it's happening a lot, and it's happening more often in our area, which is very strange.
Let me clarify. You said there's actually maple trees in Canada. Is that what? I just want to make sure on the record that there are maple trees in Canada. Just clarifying that.
Yeah, there's many.
Just a few, huh? One thing I want to say as we're getting close to wrapping this up is, obviously a lot of songs on explosions comes out of frustration. Now, we've still got a lot that we're dealing with politically and socially, and we're still not out of the pandemic yet. But, I mean, do you feel moving forward there might be a little bit more hope or more uplifting things going into the next album?
Being out here and being on the road definitely gives you more hope, and being around people and less afraid, less masks, and people are not afraid of each other anymore, and it gives a lot of hope that hopefully we're through this thing, and that it's it's gone.
And you mean in the songs itself, right, in the future of kind of that's almost an impossible thing to answer, because what we do when we write songs is we try to keep it as real as possible.
Right.
Every album, I don't think we could ever repeat an album because we weren't going through those things that created that album in the first place. So, so it's hard to say how the writing will turn out. It's going to be whatever that is in a couple of years from now. When we do another one, it's going to be whatever we're dealing with in our lives, and that's how we tend to write. If something's going on with him, or maybe you're right. Maybe it'll be really happy times, or nothing's going on. And maybe we'll
sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows.
So as we wrap it up here, I've heard that I Am a Weapon is the potential next follow-up, and I guess the next #1 song, the way things are rolling right now. Have you guys decided on that yet, or it's still kind of up in the air?
It's still kind of up in the air, but yeah, we're heading towards Weapon.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Is there a song that you found performing live now, and it could be something older or something that just seems like it gets a really great reaction, or something more fun to do, or maybe how the fans are reacting to it that they didn't before?
Well, Riot is always
it's always right.
It's just always fun. It's the last song usually that we play, and people go crazy. So it's
the chant for that one.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Every time I play Riot, I have this story that I used to play walk-up songs for my daughter's softball team, and one girl used Riot as her walk-up song, and now she's 18 or 19. I was like, and she's this tall. I said, hey, you need to tell Smalls to be at the show tonight, because you're going to get to see Riot live. Because, I mean, it was just everybody in the stands would just go crazy every time I played that song.
Yeah,
nice.
That's awesome.
Nice.
Well, pleasure to have you guys on here, man, and finally in
you.
person. It
Yeah.
feels good doing in-person interviews again, so
Thank
can't wait
you.
to see the
Absolutely.
show later on tonight.
Awesome, dude.
Thanks,
Thank
man.
you.
Thanks, man.